Okay, so we have spoken about watering and about substrate. May I add a bit more about substrate? As I said, you can use almost anything as long as it has a few properties like having a certain particle size, not decomposing, meaning being hard and staying hard, and taking in water and giving back, working as a buffer. It should also be cheap, and if possible, it should have the right color. Many of the substrates that I mentioned don't have the right color, so you use topsoil, also substrate, like I use baked loam, the dark one, and so it looks good from the but really it's not part of the substrate, it's just 2 millimeters on top. You can use charcoal as part of the substrate, by the way, which is from wood. It's not coal, it's charcoal. In Germany you can get it in every gasoline station. In America, for some strange reason, not at all. It's very cheap and very effective, also to fix some trees when they fall over in the pot. So your imagination, you can use, if you find new ones, there is probably many more substrates that are possible. Watering, any fool can water. When I'm away, my wife waters. Okay, but that means really you don't need to give too many instructions. The person who waters does not really have to know every tree and understand about trees. Just water until everything is wet, and then water a bit more. That's what my wife does, and she does this very well. And this does not take a lot of individual thinking, but of course you can underwater. Now feeding. Feeding is something that a lot of people more or less know about, but don't do so much. I often ask this question: how often do you feed? And then they say, well, once or twice a year. That usually means never. Because you can actually get away with not feeding your tree for 2 or 3 years. It's not good, but your tree does not die, because the tree does not, by the way, get its energy from feeding. It gets its energy from assimilation through the foliage, through and the needles, and that's where he gets the energy from. And the feeding is only to give a few things, minerals, hormones, and what have you, so that this assimilation and is helped, and the tree lives better. But it can live for quite a while without feeding. And as I said before, normal regular tap water contains a lot of minerals, so it is already feeding. Okay, but of course, since I said you use substrate and do not please use any soil at all, we have a different situation than we used to have when we used the old method, which is in your bonsai books. Your bonsai books tell you be careful with feeding, because you can overfeed, burn the roots, and you should take organic feed. You should do all sort of cakes, soy meal cakes, fish cakes, what have you. And there are all these formulas about feeding. It's like you have to learn to cook before you can feed. And all this made some sense with old soil, but not so much with modern substrate anymore. One thing you have to understand: since there's nothing in there, you must feed more than you used to. The next thing, you're more off also, because if you follow my regime and water a lot, a real lot, not just a bit, every time you water, you really flush the whole tree. If you do that, and you should do that, then you're flushing out all feed again. Okay, not all the feed are part of the feed, at least. So you understand that in general you have to feed more. Okay, the secret is that you have to feed a lot more, not just a bit more. I feed up to 20, up to 60 times more than a regular person. Why that? Well, because I feed every 10 days or so, max, or every 2 weeks, but not longer, and I feed about 3 to 4 times more than on the prescription. I go to the cheapest store that we have, and I buy liquid fertilizer for ordinary plants, and there it says 1 cap per 10 liters of water, and I use 4 caps. So it means I use 4 times the strength, and I water every 2 weeks, while they water about 2 times a year. So now you can imagine that it's at least 20 times more than an ordinary person. In addition, I also water organically. I would prefer, by the way, to feed organically only because that's the best for trees. Only problem is that it does not work always. It does not work when it's cold. Like, for example, if it's below 12 degrees Celsius, it doesn't work. It also feeding in general is not very good when it's very hot. In some countries it's over 35 degrees Celsius for a few weeks. Don't feed during that time, be careful. Anyway, organic fertilizing is throwing something at the trees that smells. That is some organic thing that's decomposing and that's somehow being made into fertilizer that the plant can take in. Now, who does that? Well, it's little creatures like bacteria, like fungi and like worms, and they all together, they work and create out of this organic material particles that the tree can take in and live off. But they can only work when it's warm and when it's moist. Now, that is only the case in my climate, like beginning of May, all summer and until about the end of August. Okay, so this is the time period when you can and should use organic. Before and after, it doesn't help because it will not be made into smaller particles because all these creatures are not active anymore. So my feeding scheme is like this. I start by end of March, beginning of April with organic feeding and do that every two weeks and feed full strength everything, like small trees, big trees, recently repotted trees, collected trees, only sick trees I'm careful. If a tree is clearly sick, I try to not feed too much. Otherwise, don't care, just feed.